Yo, 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 yo. What's good with it, man? It's the homie Mac. Music, art, culture, knowledge. Each one teach one. Peace and love. Reporting live from the Dogon. Dogon. You know what it is. This is another session of Mac Minutes, man. Mac Minutes. Thumbs up, give me the likes. Thumbs up, give me the likes. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, 82 Kings. Watching this from your laptop, your computer, whatever, what have you. Right in the corner, pew, pew, pew. You can see it. I know y'all like those pistol sounds, real gangster. Pew, pew. Right there in the corner, bottom, should be the bottom right corner of your screen. You should see the watermark that can get you the link so you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. A lot of dope content over here. Yeah, but for this session of Mac Minutes, I will be talking about Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana. Not only Gary, Indiana, but, well, I want to use Gary, Indiana as a case study to make a larger point. And the point that I'm trying to make is political representation is cool. Symbolism is cool. But at the end of the day, this is all about economics. This is all an economics arms race. And I'm saying that in context of black people. But yeah, let me get to it. Gary, Indiana was founded in 1906. It is in Lake County in northwest Indiana. It's about 25 miles from downtown Indiana. Downtown Indiana. It's about 25 miles from downtown Chicago. It's on the coast. It's near Lake Michigan. It has a beach, essentially. You're driving distance from a beach. You're near a major city, Chicago. When you think about it, the real estate that Gary has it's prime real estate. Yeah, a lot of people, I guess they don't necessarily take that into consideration when you mention Gary. I've always had a genuine respect for people from Gary that I've encountered. I've always felt like they had an inner resilience. I always respected that. Gary a lot of times is equated to violence. And I think throughout the 90s, Gary, Indiana was always within the top 10, I think, in highest homicide rates. And I think at some point it was the murder capital a couple times. Gary, Indiana is, it's replete with gang violence. You got the Vice Lords, you got the Gangster Disciples, people in Folk Nation that are there. Gary, Indiana, as of now, is very dilapidated. I think they said 1 in 3 buildings in Gary, Indiana. No, 1 in 4. I think 1 in 4 buildings in Gary, Indiana is either vacant or pretty much abandoned. You hear about the Dory Miller projects, I think. Dory Miller projects, I believe. Notorious, the Valley, East Side, Gary, Indiana. Like it's live. It's live. It goes down. I believe I said 4 out of 10 of the residents of Gary, Indiana are living at or below the poverty line. I think over half the citizenry in Gary, Indiana is actually unemployed. But it's not fair for the narrative of Gary, Indiana to start there. Again, Gary was founded in 1906. It actually became a booming industry due to the steel mills. And there were other corporations that set up shop down there. If you hear a lot of the older people from Gary who grew up like in the 50s and 60s and 70s, they'll tell you like Gary was booming. I want to say in 1956, it was either Ebony or Jet magazine. I want to say Ebony. They said that Gary, Indiana was like the land of milk and honey. It was a good place for black economic growth and for black people to thrive. And unfortunately, I don't even want to say, well, how do I say it? I guess what I want people to understand that things don't just, they don't just fall apart overnight. You know, it's a process. Again, there's a lot of urban blight in Gary, things of that nature, crime, unemployment, drugs, typical things that you see in a lot of places where poverty is rife. But let's get to it. Again, I want to go beyond that narrative and just talk about how Gary was. Again, I just talked about, how it was booming economically. A lot of people from the South migrated north. A lot of them went to Detroit. A lot of them went to Chicago. But a lot of them went to Gary, specifically from Alabama to Mississippi, Arkansas, the South. So in around 1963, Gary, Indiana got its first black mayor, Mr. Richard Gordon Hatcher, R.I.P. And from what I've heard, Brother Hatcher was with the shits, man. He pro-black. He was definitely pushing for self-determination for black people. He was an advocate for black people, staunch advocate for black people. Was not an ass kisser or a bootlicker. He did not sell black people out. Again, he was very much a very poignant advocate for black people. And this pissed some people off. Now, mind you, Gary is a Democratic city, but a lot of the state legislators, state officials, whatever, and just as a whole, Indiana is a Republican state. We know that I want to say per capita, Indiana has, I don't know if it's still like this, but I know in context of in the historical context that I'm speaking of now, the KKK had per capita, the KKK had a lot of members in Indiana. Yeah, I want to say maybe either the second or third wave of the Klan came through Indiana. Yeah, it either came through Indiana or it came through Georgia at Stone Mountain. But one of them. So yeah, just factor that in. Like, I know I met dudes from Gary, Indiana. They would always say, we gangsta island. I used to kind of think that was weird. But socially, I get it now. Because I always felt like Gary is kind of like on an island by itself. It's like Gary and the culture there, and then the rest of Indiana. I know it goes down in Naptown. There are black people in Naptown. Shout out to Indianapolis, as well as South Bend. I heard they get it in South Bend too, Evansville. But as a whole, Gary is anomalous. Its culture is anomalous. But yeah, as when Mr. Hatcher, Mr. Richard Gordon Hatcher, gotta look at my notes. Mr. Richard Gordon Hatcher, when he became mayor, a lot of people didn't like that, specifically a lot of white people. So what happened? Gary had a strong taxpayer base, a strong economic base, but there was so much black wealth being developed. There was so much black opulence. Again, like I said, Gary's an island. It's a Democratic city, but it's surrounded by Republicans. And they actually got to a point where black people started to increasingly populate the city, and the numbers got a little thrown off. White people didn't like that. So you had legislators that were from Gary, that lived in Gary, that that pretty much played in a role of Gary's demise. They signed legislation to get jobs taken away from the city. You had white flight, so that takes away from the tax base. They're leaving. What else? Then at one point they said some of the steel mills were leaving. Steel mills left simply because there were just so many black people doing well. How jacked up is that? How jacked up is that? And I guess I get frustrated because I think it's a misnomer to think, oh, black people don't want to work. Black people are just sorry. Black people are cool with public assistance. No. There were things institutionally that were ripped from up underneath us, ripped from under us, that put us in a lot of dire straits. And this is where I think a lot of the teachings of Elijah Muhammad come in, where he would always say, do for self. You have to create your own infrastructure. If you don't have your own infrastructure, you're depending on people who don't necessarily have your best interests at heart or don't look like you. And I get frustrated because essentially what happened to Gary happened to Haiti back in 1804. When Haiti broke away from French colonial rule, the French were like, you know what? Don't let all you European countries, none of y'all take any of the crops, the sugar cane, all the cut Haiti off economically. We're not gonna let nobody do business. And that's what happened to Gary. You know, the economic base was ripped asunder. There weren't any jobs. A lot of people had to leave simply because there were no jobs. The population in Gary at its peak, I want to say in the 70s, was like maybe 180,000. As of now, 2021, it's a little over 70,000. You know, it's really sad. If you look at pictures of Gary or just see videos of it, it has a real dark, gothic, despondent, hopeless look. You know, and I know that there is hope in Gary. There are people who want to make it a better place. There are people who have dreams and visions and who are actively in the community trying to make it better. So I'm not trying to say it's a hopeless place. I actually heard something about a steel company was going to invest some money to like over $925,000 to set up shop and have like a basically like a steel yard. So that would employ people. I don't know where that stands as of today, but that would employ people. I actually heard, just to show you how thrown off things are, and this isn't even just in Gary, this is in Detroit, I believe Milwaukee too, where they have dollar lots, where basically you can buy a house for $1. It's usually in some really bad condition, but you buy it for $1, fix it up, but you have to like live there for a while, make sure you have a good job, and they'll let you pretty much revitalize it. I want to say the average home in Gary is going for like $60,000, which is like hella cheap. Even lower than that, you got some homes going for $14,000. I think what they said between. Let me pull this up. Give me 1 second. 1 second. Yeah, between 1970 to 2012, that we have had between 1,500 to more than 10,000 black political figures. Even had a black president. Has that been enough for us? No. The average black household in America is worth $1,500 liquid. The average white household in America is worth $40,000 liquid. The racial wealth gap, the racial wealth gap is perpetually growing, and I'm saying all that to say, it's not enough just to have black people in politics. Symbolism is not enough. Symbolism does not suffice. We need policy, but again, politics is not a gift; it's an exchange, and it's rooted in economics. One of the things that I had said that this is not. I got this from Dr. Amos Wilson. I had quoted him as saying, our issue is not an issue of morality. It's an issue of economics. I think black people, we inherently are very spiritual. We're inherently very moral when it comes to our dealings with other people. But it's not about good or bad. It's about money. Everybody's going to be loyal to the flow of money in the dollar bill, essentially. And I want people to understand. I'm making this status. I'm making this status. Not on Facebook. I'm making this video, this MACK Minutes, to show that we have to go beyond having political representation, beyond having symbolic representation. That is not sufficient. That's insufficient as all get out. My mama's watching, so I'm gonna try to cut down on the cursing. Love you, Mom. Dad's watching too. Salute to you, Pops. But that I want people to understand this is an issue of power. Power. There's a power dynamic. And more often than not, the person with the most resources and the most wealth and the most money wins. The end game is economics. So I hear a lot of black people talking about creating generational wealth, about getting land and getting resources. All that is cool. But at the end of the day, if we're not able to pull our resources and our money together and create opportunities for our people, we will forever be independent on other people. Carter G. Woodson has this quote, who is the father of Black History Month, and it's Black History Month. Carter G. Woodson has this quote where he says, this is just in summation, you can't pull yourself out of the ghetto when you're dependent on other people's hands to pull you out of the ghetto. You have to do for self. And I would even say, to go even further, how about we revitalize the ghetto? You know, how about we build with each other and you know, make a Wakanda? You know, everybody likes the ideal of Wakanda, but, you know, few people are willing to do the dirty work to create one, to foment one. I know some people in South Georgia, some brothers and sisters in South Georgia, in Middle Georgia actually, I think, they put their money together and they pretty much created their own, like, town. You know, we need more of that. We need a more self-sufficiency, self-determination. That has to be the focus. One more thing about Gary, just to show how they intentionally tried to underdevelop it. Gary, in Indiana, there's a law where if you're a second-class city, there can't be any incorporation within like a certain mile radius. I think maybe 3-mile radius. I don't know. It's like to serve as kind of like a buffer, so nobody can come in there and starve you economically. But I guess Indiana went ahead and started Maryville, which is not that far from Gary, and pretty much all the money that could have went to Gary, they built those opportunities in Maryville. And it pretty much is starving Gary. You got people in Gary that have to drive 30 miles to get groceries. There are a lot of food deserts in Gary. Just to get essential day-to-day needs. Day-to-day needs that you may have. Day-to-day domestic needs you may have. They got to go travel far. But anyway, I hope you muse over what I'm saying. Symbolism, no bueno. Political representation is not sufficient. It's cool, but it's not sufficient.